Hey, it's Judd.
Looking at one of the most dominant linebackers in Big Ten history. His name, Andy Katzenmoyer, and he played for Ohio State from 1996 to 1998. The first true freshman to start at linebacker for OSU. In that freshman year, 12 sacks. By his sophomore year, he was a first-team All-American and Dick Butkus Award winner. He finished his career with 3 first-team All-Big Ten selections. Andy Katzenmoyer, a Letterman legend.
Let's get it. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. And welcome into Juck on Bucks on a Friday. Appreciate you guys so much for joining me. It is a big Friday. Listen, I had no show yesterday, and I apologize. If you're not familiar with how I do this, I'm limited to 5 shows a week, okay? That's the orders from headquarters. Her name's Nina. I get 5 shows a week, and I always have to do my weekend show. So in order to do that, I have to take one out of the weekday rotation. I never do know when that's going to be. It's usually on a day where I just am busy at work or something. You know what I mean? But I always do 4 during the week. And I got to make sure I do my weekend show because it frustrates me as a consumer of Buckeye content that there's not enough stuff on the weekend. So when I started the show, I said, I'm always going to do a weekend show. And I always do that weekend show. It's sometimes a little bit different format, changes from week to week, but a lot of people like it. And that airs over at the Juck on Bucks channel. So if you're watching over on Menace and you've never been over there, please do go over there and subscribe to the Juck on Bucks channel for me. I'd really appreciate that. And join me for my weekend show. Now, this weekend show going to be different. We've got the man, David Sanders Jr., making his decision at 1:15 on Saturday, going to be live on 247. Now, I'm coming on live at 12:30. I've got a slew of guests, some of your favorites. They're going to be joining me, and I'm going to roll those guests in like Carlos Loughlin rolls his running backs. I'm going to roll them in for 10-minute hits with me, and in between, I'm going to be talking to the chat. We're going to get the decision at 1:15. So 12:30 I start, 1:15 he makes his decision. We're going to take this puppy on as long as it needs to go because there may be celebrating, there may be venting, whichever way it goes, I don't know. But we've got Chris Drew coming. We've got my buddy Dan Divjak from the Best Damn Podcast coming. My buddy JR from the Voice of College Football, Ohio State. JR's rankings. You know JR. You've seen me on his show, I hope. If not, check him out. And the 2 newest podcast bros, the Buckeye boys. Now, you probably know these guys, too, if you're in big to Buckeye shows. Ohio 7715, that's Devin. And Mello. They started their own podcast recently, and they're airing that podcast over on the OHIO podcast. And do check them out, please. They just had their first episode. For episode 1, mighty impressive. They went for an hour. They were smooth, really, really good stuff. So let's support the guys that help support all the people that, we try to move their platforms up and help them out. Those guys are great. So that's the plan on Saturday. And there's a whole lot of people that think they know what's going on with this decision for Sanders. We'll talk more about that and everything offensive line in recruiting later, because there are some folks, believe it or not, who really don't want to talk about that anymore. But I've got a lot to get to when it comes to that. Also, an update on one of the Ohio 4, Adam Guthrie. Talked to him the other night. He got a big offer. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But if you don't want to hear that kind of stuff, I'll get to the other stuff first, because we got some other stuff to get to, obviously. Ryan Day made the call.
Ryan, do you have a starting quarterback?
We do. Will Howard will start the first game against Akron. He is our starting quarterback. When you take the aggregate of all the numbers, Will graded out significantly ahead of the other guys in the teamwork. And, Devin right now would be the number 2. Now we still have a big scrimmage on Saturday, so these guys are going to continue to work. Julian, Lincoln, Air, they're all going to, compete, we're going to try to get as many reps as we can. We are currently still rolling 3 groups, so there's a lot of reps to go around. But we're excited about Will being the starter. Will has really taken a command of the offense, I believe. You feel him in the huddle. You feel his experience. think he did a really good job, as we talked about, of changing his body in the off season. So he's become a threat both with his legs and with his arm. And the more he understands what he's doing out there, and when he does, he's really executing very well. I think the guys are excited, when he gets in the huddle. Not to say that they're not excited when the other quarterbacks are in there, but they do feel Will. And, I know he's excited about leading the team.
Obviously, you've got a guy who had a quarterback competition last year, and the way it kind of rolled out was sloppy. I think he'd probably admit that. Wishy-washy, right? So he wants to throw his full support behind Will Howard. Really, really strong. He just came out and said that Will graded out significantly higher. I'm a little surprised by that. It seemed to me to be a little bit tighter than significantly grading out higher for Will. So is he maybe throwing a little more gusto onto that than is actually the case? I don't know. Could be. But it seems like there's a decisive winner. He said that nobody in the locker room is going to be surprised by this. And both he and Chip have said all along, the players know. The players know. So it sounds like Will won it decisively. And he praised the heck out of Will, as did Chip Kelly.
But the decision-making process has always been at the top of the list. And then after that, it would be repetitive accuracy and then athleticism. And I think Will has all three of those. His ability to help us in the run game is going to be a really big plus for us this year. Because he's not just a guy that's going to hand it off back there. I think people are going to have to respect him with the ability to run. Again, part of his work ethic in the offseason, I mentioned it the other day, he ran 22 miles an hour this summer at 236 pounds. So, there is a threat of a run from that position. So you're going to have to defend 11. Some teams, when you play against them, you have to defend 10 because the quarterback's not going to hurt you in the run game. But Will can if you do. Now,
Jim Knowles even had some really good things to say about him. So Will's the dude. We enter into the season with Will. And what does this say about our quarterback play? That Will Howard, by the way, he said last year at this time, Devin Brown was the starter, he thought. So Will Howard just beat last year's starter at this point out significantly. Does that tell us we can expect a whole lot better out of the quarterback room? I think so. I mean, I thought so anyway, but that makes me feel more confident. And Julian's saying, does he have a real shot at the number 2 job? Ryan Day said, yes, he does. Absolutely, he does. That doesn't surprise me that he has a real shot at it. It surprises me that he came out and said it like that. I would have thought he would kind of slow roll that and see how it goes later on in the season, how things continue to develop. But he came right out and said it. You got to feel for Devin a little bit. Certainly losing another quarterback competition. When he discussed Devin, he said Devin's done everything that we asked him to do. Got to continue to work on consistency, ball security. And if he can do that, he can play for us. He can be a contributor. Sucks for him, man. He's a guy that all of us really like. I mean, I think everybody really loves his attitude. You really can't say anything bad about him. There's a lot of people that knock him for certain things, and some are fair, some are not fair, in my opinion. But you got to respect him as a Buckeye. Guy's a heck of a Buckeye, and he just may get a whole lot of playing time this year. We don't know how this is going to shape out. And I feel pretty confident should that happen. All right, so now that Big Bill, Willard, Oppenhoward, as my buddies over at the Morning Roast are calling him, is the starting quarterback. Will Howard's our guy. We got that squared away. Right guard was our other position battle that was going on that we need some clarification on. And Ryan Day and Chip Kelly both seem to give a little bit. It sounds like Tegra Shabola has got the lead in this one. And I was thinking it was Tegra Shabola. Then Dylan came on and said he thinks Carson Hinsman. Shortly after that, I heard a couple other guys on the beat saying Carson Hinsman, and it gave me the feeling that they had heard something because they all kind of said it in unison. You know how that goes with those guys. Anyway, it sounded today that it's Tegra Shabola who's in the lead, and he just might have been in the lead all along. Certainly those 2 practices that Carson missed definitely didn't help him. Doesn't sound like much, but that's a big deal. Those practices are huge. There's only so many of them. If it is Tegra, that's kind of who I was hoping would get the gig. Tegra's 6'6", 330. Chip Kelly said, big people move small people. We like big people. But it's not just that. high school film doesn't always translate, but it shows traits. Integra has some really nasty traits on the football field. A mild-mannered guy, very polite guy. He's disrespectful on the field. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him get the mental game down to let those skills shine on the field, because he is just nasty. Seth McLaughlin got a bunch of praise from Ryan Day, said he's the most consistent lineman. That is excellent to hear, that the center is the most consistent lineman. You got a guy who's smart and consistent with experience running the show. I absolutely love to hear that. Chip talked more about Austin Searveld, said they got him playing guard, playing tackle. That's great because he's so tall. Chip said he didn't realize he was so tall because he's so built, but when you pull up on him, he's a legit 6'5", can swing guard and tackle. So between Austin Searveld, Ryan Day said Zen Mikulski was showing some, and then the guy who doesn't win between Tegra and Carson Hinsman, you may be looking at a solid 7 here. That's what you need. That's fantastic. So heading into the spring, we had 2 position groups with big question marks. What was it going to be at quarterback? What was it going to be? What was the offensive line going to look like? I was feeling pretty shaky about the offensive line. Last year, they just played soft, straight up. They just played like a soft line. They didn't play together. They didn't grade out horribly. It just, you needed 3 yards. It didn't seem like they could ever get you 3. Heck, you needed 1. It didn't seem like you could get you 1. Against Notre Dame, they ran to a spot without a man on the field and barely got a yard there. So what are we going to see this year with 3 of the same guys if it's Tegra in there? You got Josh Simmons with a totally different body, looking like a first or second rounder at left tackle. Donovan Jackson, a preseason All-American candidate, 6'4", 330 at left guard. You got an experienced center who knows what he's doing, who's smart, and is the most consistent guy. You got a brand new right guard, whether that's a guy with experience, a year's worth of experience in Carson Hinsman, or the 6'6", 330-pound Tegra Shabola, who beat out that guy at the right guard. That sounds pretty good. Then you got Josh Fryer, one of just 2 guys who won the Iron Buckeye in both the spring and the fall, who everybody is saying has been the guy who's made the most improvement in the offensive line. You're looking at a crew. And I know a lot of people aren't going to believe it until they see it. I think this is going to be an excellent offensive line. It's going to be excellent. You got Chip handling the play calling now. Chip knows how to scheme away from what you don't do well and scheme into what you do well. I just feel a tremendous amount of confidence with this unit now. And when we listen to Ryan Day talk, this sounds like a man who is confident in his roster. So the 2 biggest question marks, quarterback, offensive line, I feel a heck of a lot better about both. What were the 2 secondary question groups? Linebacker and tight end for me. Linebacker, James Laurinaitis has made one heck of a difference. With Cody Simon leading the way, the green dot guy, the veteran, Sonny Styles, who in the spring, James said, wasn't quite there yet, still learning. Obviously, he just moved down there. Of course, he wasn't ready yet. He was moving his feet too fast. He wasn't being slow until it was time to be fast. It sounds like James is saying that he's there now. He's just about there. It's not perfect, but he's play ready. He's game ready. You got CJ Hicks with a ton of confidence personally. He talked in his last press conference like I've never heard him talk before. Totally different guy, sounds like up there. I mean, he's confident. He's ready to go. He's embracing his role. You've got Gabe Powers getting a lot of praise. And you've got Arvell Reese, who Jim Knowles said he's tough downhill, needs to learn some more things. He goes out and wins the defensive silver bullet of the day they had the scrimmage. So they're going hard. And a backup linebacker won the silver bullet of the day. That's impressive. So linebacker, box checked, man. I'm feeling really confident about that. The only group I'm not feeling confident about now is tight end. Not feeling confident about tight end. Not after what Ryan Day said about tight ends. So tight ends, and when I say concerning, I don't mean a huge concern. I mean, I'm nitpicking because I think what we've got here is an absolute elite team in every position group is very, very good. But tight end, I think, is lagging behind a little bit. And what concerned me today, listening to Ryan Day, he talked about Will Kazmarek. He said he's accountable in both the run game and the passing game. That's great to hear. We know that he is a much better blocker than G. Scott. He talked about G. Scott. He said G's in and out. There was no follow-up question to G being in and out. I'd love to know what he meant exactly by that. But we know it's not anything in the passing game. So is he missing blocking assignments? Obviously, that was our biggest fear. Is G. Scott going to start? I'm not so sure anymore. I know everybody's thought he's going to be the front runner. I feel like it might be Kazmarek, and I think that Kazmarek, it ought to be Kazmarek if G is in and out on blocking assignments. But we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel too. And you just can't have that. You absolutely can't. So a little concerning there. Talked about Jelani. Again, he said he's not quite there yet. Praised him a little more than he did last week, but just not quite there yet. Definitely wants to see it. Patrick Gerd, he said he's going to play. And Bennett Christian, he said he's had his best week of practice. So good stuff out of Gerd. They definitely know what he is by now. Christian Bennett going to continue to improve. He's a really good blocker. Will Kazmarek, a really good blocker who can also catch the ball. Not a dynamic pass catcher, but he can catch it. Got some pretty good straight line speed, certainly not twitchy. And G obviously is going to excel at catching the ball, but you've got to be able to block. In this offense, you got to be able to block. And, you can't be missing assignments and blowing up plays. You just can't. So I don't know where we're going to go or what direction they're going to go there, but it's concerning to me that after this long, he's being characterized as in and out. I just, that's concerning to me. So those position groups, quarterback, offensive line, looking up, linebacker, looking up, tight end, feel the same as I did in the spring. And the rest, they're top 1 or 2 in the country. Running back, DBs, 1, according to Phil Steele and most everybody else. Wide receiver, most people agree that it's the second best group in the country. Defensive line, if it's not the best in the country, starting rotation, if you factor in the depth, it certainly is the best in the country. There's no defensive line that has this many starting caliber players on the 2 deep. And Jim Knowles talking about the 2 deep today. First name out of his mouth again, Caden McDonald. Caden's always showing up. This guy must just be balling out, man. Absolutely balling out. He's a load at 330 pounds. They list him at 6'3". He's definitely not 6'3". So we're talking about a spark plug who is twitched up and apparently very aggressive and apt to make plays. So that is great news. So scrimmage tomorrow, 1 more week of camp, and then we're in a game prep week for the mighty University of Akron Zips. And I believe that's about a 50-point spread. And what's cool about that is we're going to get to see a lot of the younger guys that we've been talking about a ton get in, for a lot of playing time, I would imagine, against those Zips. Then we got the same thing the following week with another cream puff. Then we got a bye week. You hate to waste a bye week after 2 cream puffs and before your 3rd cream puff, but we got 2 this year. Everybody does throughout college football. And again, that is not something new to college football, but it's going to be that way in 2024 and 2025. And it's just the way the calendar falls. You start Labor Day, go through the last Saturday in November, and most years that is 13 Saturdays. This particular calendar year and 2025, that is 14 Saturdays. So you got to slot 2 bye weeks. And the NCAA bylaws, you have to go through those dates. Can't start your first game before the Thursday before Labor Day. And the last week of the season is the last Saturday of November. So you got 14 Saturdays, means you get 2 bye weeks. Everybody does. And the first one for us falls after game 2, which I really don't like because I want to start seeing some momentum build. I hate bye weeks. I hate them. I hate them so much. But whatever, we'll get through it. We're almost there, guys. It's almost time for some football. I can't even believe it. It's almost here. It's been a unbelievably long off season for me. Started the show in late January, and talking about football as much as I have from then to now has made this just 3 times as long as this usually takes. Is CBS put out their annual preseason All-American list. And we got some Buckeyes on that preseason All-American list, but there was some interesting stuff to go along with that, is they also announced their preseason Freshman of the Year. And of course, that preseason Freshman of the Year is one Jeremiah Smith. We never had a doubt, right? Obviously. But here's something that's funny. I've got this Oregon fan, smart fan. I like him, but he's been arguing with me for a while about Jeremiah Smith and how potentially good or good he is not. And he sent this to me today, tagged me on Twitter, using it to prove his point that these folks were, quote, more rational. This is their rational opinion. Folks who know it instead of my sensationalist opinion of Jeremiah Smith. And here's what he sent me. And what this is are the preseason Biletnikoff Award odds, the gambling odds for who's going to win the Biletnikoff. And you can see down there, number 7 is J.J. Smith. And he thought that this was making his point, when in fact, it is utterly insane that a freshman who has never played football, never taken a snap in college, is the 7th man in the odds to win the Biletnikoff. That's the award Marvin Harrison Jr. won last year as the best receiver in football. Number 7. That's absurd to have a freshman there. Absurd. Never in my life have I seen a freshman like that. That's absurd. But he thought he was proving his point. He was proving mine and ours, as we all know, that J.J. Smith is not only going to win the Freshman of the Year, but he is going to be in the running for a whole lot of other awards as well as a freshman, and very well could be middle of the season considered the best receiver in college football. I mean, would any of us be surprised? I don't think so. But it appears that a lot of people still will be. And it's going to be a lot of fun watching them come to terms with the fact that they were actually right. This is real. And it is. But on those All-American teams, the SEC led the way with 21 players. The Big 10 was 16. The Big 12 was 6. ACC with 5. Independent, Notre Dame with 4. Mountain West with 1. Conference USA with 1. The first team featured Donovan Jackson, Caleb Downs, and the second team featured Emeka Egbuka, Quinshon Judkins, and Denzel Burke. But maybe the more surprising thing, and I want you to take this back, all the way back to the next day after the Cotton Bowl, and how you felt about the state of the program, where things were headed, how the season just went, how it just ended, to where we are now. That feeling then, this feeling now, and the crazy amount of change between those two feelings, the way you felt about the program then versus now, without a single game being played. Pretty wild what an offseason can do in college football these days with the transfer portal and obviously the senior decisions and the coaching changes. All that played a big factor, but just an amazing difference in how I feel about this team, the future of this team, the future of the coaching staff, the direction things are going in. Ryan Day being named the preseason coach of the year by CBS 24/7 on this list here. Pretty amazing when you think back to where we are at then. They went on to say about Day is 56-8 as a coach. It's one of the most absurd runs in the modern history of the sport. At the same time, the goals for this season are clear. Beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win a national championship. Day has done absolutely everything in his power to make certain it happens, which makes him our preseason coach of the year. 11 Warriors did a sweet breakdown of the roster, and I want to share with you some of the facts that they pulled up here. The way they broke it down, I thought was pretty cool. So on this roster currently, there are 14 5-stars on the roster. 54 4-stars, 9 3-stars. Of those 3 stars, 5 of them are starters, and they are Josh Fryer, Ty Hamilton, Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, and Seth McLaughlin. 2 of those guys, Buckeye recruits, the rest transfers. There are only 11 scholarship transfers out of the 85. That is way lower than most schools, but it's 2 more than Ohio State had in 2023. 2 is negligible. They haven't gone heavy on the portal at all. The fact that there is 11 out of 85 is honestly pretty weird when we compare it to most other rosters. 122 total players, 120 is the limit, but TC Caffey, Zach Herbstreit with his heart condition, they're not going to be playing this year. Ohio State has awarded 5 of those walk-on scholarships now, though they declined to tell us who they are, which is weird. Don't get that. I wish someone could give me a logical reason as to why we don't celebrate that. I think it's one of the cooler things. That's the dream of every walk-on, right? To earn the scholarship, and they don't even let us know. What we do know is David Adolph, the wide receiver, who's been absolutely balling all camp, and Patrick Gerd, without a doubt, are 2 of those walk-ons that got a scholarship. No 6th-year seniors on the team. There are some 5th-year seniors that still have 1 year of eligibility next year should they choose to return. Josh Fryer, Ty Hamilton, and Mitchell Melton can all come back next year should they choose to. Getting any of those guys back would be amazing. And I was thinking when I read that about Ty Hamilton, that as much as we talk about this defense and as much as we break down the players, he has got to be the least talked about by a long shot. In fact, we talk about the guys in the 2 deep and the 3 deep on the defensive line more than we talk about Ty Hamilton. Don't know why that is. Maybe it's just position related, or that he's just, I don't know. He's a hell of a player, man. Also, the younger brother of a guy who was a hell of a player. You would think he would get more run. Also, this roster contains guys from 4 countries, 55 Ohioans out of the 120 players. The second most represented state is Georgia with 9 players. Then you've got Texas with 6, Arizona, Florida, and New Jersey with 5. But Jersey is about to explode because we've got 5 guys that reside in New Jersey in the class of 2025. Des Jones, Deshaun Stewart, and Quincy Porter, all from New Jersey and play in New Jersey. Then you got the 2 guys who play at St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but live in New Jersey and come across the bridge every day, and that's Isaiah West and Maxwell Roy. They're best buddies. So 5 dudes from New Jersey. As far as countries, we've got our boy Hero Canoe from Germany, Max LeBlanc and Anthony Veneri are from Canada, and then we got the punter from Australia, the big fella there. What's his name? McClarty or something? The big guy that can't seem to... I guess when he gets a hold of a punt, it goes a mile, and he also, miss kicks 4 or 5 before he lands one. It doesn't sound like he's going to win the job. It's going to be Veneri punting the ball, and that's just fine. An experienced punter, I'm happy with it. Let the big leg fella learn, and I'd say walk off the bus, but he won't be traveling. Further, there are 18 high schools that have produced multiple Buckeyes on the roster. Pick Central, 4 Buckeyes. Dublin Coffin with 3. The Glenville Tarblooders, best name in high school football, got 3, and we showed those guys the other day. Arvell Reese, Bryce West, and Demarion Witten. Lakota West with 3. St. Ed's with 3. Out-of-state schools that have produced multiple Buckeyes. Beaufort High School out of Georgia, Edric Houston and Seth McLaughlin. G. Scott and JT both went to the same high school in Washington. Kenyatta Jackson and Jeremiah Smith, both from Chaminade, Madonna. Aaron Noland and Jelani Thurman both went to Langston Hughes in Georgia. And Jordan Hancock and Caden McDonald both went to North Gwinnett in Georgia. That's the part that they call Yankee country, and that's where we are going to pull Tyler Atkinson out of.
I'm going to super chat Zach to keep the show moving and grooving. T. Shiesty, thanks for the 10. Been watching Jug before y'all linked and still watch him. We doing on some Homer BS today. That's still my guy. Join and sign up for the website Sunday. Officially part of the Menace Gang. I love Jug.
That's what's up, Shiesty. I appreciate it. Yeah, we brought Juck over to be a homer. That's why we brought him over, because he's definitely a huge Buckeye, and we wanted a Buckeye morning show. So that's not surprising to me.
And he catches everything.
Shiesty, bro. My guy called me all the way out, man. Jeez, oh Pete. Now listen, I obviously I'm a homer, right? But I think there's a big difference between being a homer and being a blind homer. A homer is someone who's usually going to, I don't know, the things that are good, maybe amp them up a little more. Uh, a blind homer is someone who can never take the opposite side and see things in the program that maybe aren't perfect, point out things that aren't great. And I certainly am capable of doing that. I mean, this was on the same day that I got called a homer. This gentleman here says it's one of those offers you can't resend without consequences. Logical thought. It's easier to just grab the pitchforks and rile up the mob. So that's what Juck does. So in the same day, I get called a homer. I get accused of riling up the mob in the pitchforks. And I think that kind of means I'm probably pretty much down the middle. Maybe a little extreme on both ends. I'm pretty reactive. I get it. I'm a hardcore Buckeye fan. That's just how we get down. You know what I mean? There's a difference, I think, sometimes when you watch me and maybe you're used to watching a beat guy or something that doesn't really share their emotion. Like, that's all I am. I'm emotion because, I'm just a Buckeye fan, right? So I understand why that may be shocking. I guess there is a certain amount of maybe responsibility that maybe you should take when you start to get to a different level of platform. And I'm just not gonna. I'm just gonna continue to be me. You know what I'm saying? And that's just what it is. Because there are some things that, like, I've got issues with. And when I've got an issue, if I can maybe use it to spread the word and get something that comes from my show, like on the cover of Bucknuts, Ohio State O-line offers versus Georgia, Bama, and Michigan. Like that's straight from Juck on Bucks. You know what I mean? On the cover of Bucknuts. And now it's an issue that's being discussed elsewhere. So if I can do that, I'm going to do it. And what that tweet was in reference to was this. Adam Guthrie got an offer from Texas yesterday. Adam Guthrie is one of the Ohio Four. I tweeted out 6'7" and a lean 290-pound true offensive tackle, long arms, quick feet, 4-star, top 200 overall, one of the 3 best linemen in the state of Ohio in the class of 2026. 32 offers, no Buckeye offers. And understandably, I believe, Buckeye fans were not happy about this. The thing got 100,000 views because the saving grace for a lot of people when we talk about Buckeye recruiting recently on the offensive line is, don't worry, we got a great class in 2026. And I've tried to sound the alarm on that as well. That's not going so hot. Number one, Adam Guthrie, the third ranked one, doesn't have an offer. And Adam Guthrie isn't happy about not having that offer. He's also being pursued by some heavyweights, as you see. And it's not just Texas. It's Texas A&M. It's Florida. It's Miami. He's got offers everywhere, 32 of them. And he doesn't have an Ohio State offer. Now, there are some old lines of thinking that you don't offer an Ohio prospect unless you're ready to accept the commitment. And that is true generally. And you do that with borderline prospects, 3-star guys who you think might not develop into Ohio State players. You slow play them is what you call it. That doesn't apply for an elite prospect. Top 200, that's elite. 6'7" and 290 pounds, long arms, quick feet. You can't teach that. Okay. It's inexcusable, to be quite honest, not to have an offer to that kid. And let's keep in mind, we need a 6-man offensive line class in 2026. 6 guys. That's a lot. Remember, we're having a hard time locking down more than 2 right now. That's one right in the backyard who I know happens to love Ohio State. He doesn't have an offer. And let's also remember, we're going from 85 to 105 scholarships, which means you're going to go more than 6, and you're going to prioritize Ohio guys because you're going to want more guys that are going to remain in the program and be long-term developmental guys that aren't going to pop and be ready till year 3 or year 4. And they know that. So they don't think they're getting shysted without getting playing time in year 1 and year 2 and want to transfer out of the program, which means even if you viewed him as a developmental guy, he is still your top 4 lineman in the state. You're still going to want to offer him. So it's just straight inexcusable. It really is. And I'm going to point it out. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what I'm going to do. So call it what you want. I think he's a great kid. He works really hard. I know that he's a really big Buckeye fan from talking to him. And I know that the offer means a lot to him. I also think he deserves it. I also think our program needs it. So I'm going to shine some light on it with the little platform that I have. And that's just what I'm going to do. But the common refrain that I get, and I just want to lay this case out because I don't want to call out anybody here, and I don't mean to put these guys on blast, but I'm not even going to pull them up. I get comments every time these topics come up because there is a big misconception about the transfer portal. Now, the transfer portal has changed the game. You can erase mistakes in recruiting with the transfer portal. That is 100% true. You can wipe out big mistakes. You can go get yourself a quarterback. There was 44-star quarterbacks in the last class. You can do it at wide receiver. You can get a Caleb Downs at safety. You can get a Quinshawn Judkins at running back. What you can't do is roll the dice with offensive line. In the portal class of 2023, teams recognized that the demand for offensive linemen was so incredibly high. There were 44 stars that they went after him so hard and bid so hard for him, and the price went up so high that they all realized we need to make sure that we spend our money, number one, on retaining our offensive linemen. So what happened in the portal class of 2024, and I'm talking both windows after the season and in the spring, instead of 40 four-star offensive linemen, that number dropped down to 12. And of those 12 offensive linemen, 6 of them were offensive tackles. And of those 6 offensive tackles, I've gone through them all. When you're a program like Ohio State, the bar is pretty high to upgrade from the linemen that you have. A lot of people wanted to replace Josh Fryer. In both portal windows last year, there were 3 guys, by my estimation, that would have been clear upgrades over Josh Fryer. Josh Fryer last year was a very mid-level offensive tackle for our standards at Ohio State. So you got 3 opportunities. Now you're talking about a straight up recruitment with those 3 guys. And I'm not even telling you the fact that 2 of them entered knowing already where they were going with a do not contact on their name. So the bottom line is you don't have the numbers, and it's all going to boil down to what? Recruitment, right? It's a recruitment against the same guys that you recruit against in normal recruiting. 3 guys, everybody wants them. Everybody's going after them. Everybody's offering big money. Just because you have the money doesn't mean they will accept it. And now you're doing the same thing that you do in recruiting when it comes to offensive linemen. And this is specific to offensive linemen. This does not go across the board with any other position. So the truth is, yes, you can get it done, but you certainly don't want to with offensive line. It is the last gasp effort. This cannot be portaled out of. The recruiting errors cannot be portaled out of. Must be handled in recruiting, and you still are going to look in the portal every time to try to get one. Depending on how bad you need it, that's how hard you're going to go after it. But you don't ever want to put yourself in the position where it needs to be done, because there are going to be times where, as bad as you need it, you just can't get it done. The number 1 guard in this portal class was Jason Zandamela. Jason Zandamela was we talked about him on the show when he hit the portal. USC kid, couldn't crack the 3 deep at USC. Big promising kid, ended up transferring where? To Florida, to Billy Napier's mess in Florida. A couple of these tackles that were ranked 4 stars, we're talking about guys, the ones at the bottom of those 6, they dropped down a level. They didn't go up a level. They moved down. Oklahoma to SMU. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not talking about guys that I think we have in our head, like when you see these upgrades at quarterback. And again, the class of 2024, another 44-star quarterbacks, 40 and 23, same for every position. This is specific to offensive line. It is a roll of the dice, man. Roll the dice. Can't put yourself in the position. You can't. You absolutely cannot. So I just want that to be out there so that everybody understands why and got another comment recently, a couple of them, that this offensive line is looking great. I just said that. Recruiting isn't about this year's offensive line. It's about the future. So we go in to the David Sanders recruitment or announcement tomorrow. David Sanders knows his decision. Tom Loy reported that he has it. It's sealed up. He knows his decision. He will announce it tomorrow at 1:15. And both Tom Loy and their experts over at 247, Steve Wiltfong and their guys at On 3. I heard two of the Ohio State recruiting guys, every single one of them say trending Tennessee. A couple of them got their crystal balls or RPMs in on Tennessee. Not a single person is sticking their neck out for Ohio State. Alex Gleitman from Letterman Row said that the confidence around the Woody is not as much as it was before, but the Sanders camp has not told them no. So that doesn't sound great, but I think that this thing is coming down to a coin flip decision. We don't know. I don't think anybody knows. And even if I'm wrong, I'm just going to say that the coin flipped the other way, right? I refuse to believe this because there is no evidence of any of it. Not a single one of these. Listen, and here's what I mean. When Steve Wiltfong or Tom Loy have data, they come out and they say certain code words that mean this is coming from Intel. They did none of that. It was all connecting dots. We know that they gave him a new offer on the weekend, that he went out and visited for the barbecue when he said Ohio State had nothing going on. They upped the offer. Ohio State, we've heard, either didn't or couldn't match whatever it was they were trying to offer. Don't know how much truth there is to that, but we've heard it from several sources, including the most plugged-in source at Ohio State. We'll see. What are the options if Sanders says no? Javon McFadden, the kid out of Maryland who is flirting with Colorado and Maryland and Ohio State. Alex Gleitman of Letterman Row said he no longer feels very confident about that. But today, Steve Wiltfong said, basically, based on some new information, I feel good again about my RPM to Javon McFadden to Ohio State, which means he heard something, and that's great. Javon McFadden, not some great prospect, but we need a body because that's it. That's the last body on the board. We need a body. After that, you're looking at trying to flip a guy that you already lost the recruitment on, highly unlikely. And there is a couple prospects in Ohio that were not offered that went elsewhere because, and you know, in these particular instances, I agree with Fry. Nolan Davenport, not quite ready. Not a guy you would want to offer. And that's the thing. That's the difference between him and Adam Guthrie. These totally different prospects. Nolan Davenport is a borderline prospect. Converted tight end that they told to gain weight, and he went and put on dirty weight. He didn't go bulk up, put on dirty weight. Wasn't ready. Came and worked out when Jake Cook worked out. They sent Nolan Davenport away, and he committed to Wisconsin the very next day. Now, do they go circle back and try to offer him to get him back in the class just to get another body in the class? Jermeel Atkins, enormous kid, 6'7", like 320, out of down in Southwest Ohio, going to Kentucky. One of 5 Ohio kids that are going to Kentucky. Do you go circle back and try to flip him out of Kentucky? 2 guys that are 3 and 4 year developmental guys, at least, if they ever pan out. But you need bodies. So those are the options. Javon McFadden, those 2 Ohio kids trying to flip somebody, or somebody blossoms in their senior year. That's it. That's all there is. And that's where we stand as we head into the recruitment tomorrow. But I do want to say this. Josh Petty, I originally said, I don't believe this is Justin Fry's fault because I can't really count this as an L. If a guy's priorities are Florida State or Ohio State or Georgia Tech or Stanford in his Final Four, he is weighing between football school or big time degree school. And my opinion was he chose big time degree school. Just different priorities than your normal 5-star prospect. Now, two things can be true. I still think that was true, but we've now found out that more than that was to it, because his dad did an interview with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And in this interview, he went through the whole process, including the NIL process. And it didn't specifically list this as a quote from him, but they gave the details of the price of that offer that Georgia Tech gave him, $800,000 a year. For context, the highest paid lineman on the Ohio State line doesn't make half of that. So you absolutely couldn't do that. You couldn't. This guy, not only is he 250 pounds, like he's a 2-year developmental guy. I mean, 5-star or not, this isn't a guy like David Sanders who's walking in and starting probably, right off the rip. You can justify that to the guys on the team. You can't justify bringing in a 2-year developmental guy who, honestly, I think his bust rate is decent. You can't justify that unless you're prepared to raise everybody else who's starting on that offensive line. And you don't got the money to raise them all up to that. So it's an absolute non-starter. They could not have done it. There's just not enough money. You would not have wanted them to spend it anyway. So Petty, obviously, not the fault of the offensive line coach or Ohio State or the foundation. That's just one that got out of hand, and you got to just kiss it goodbye. Now, on the good news of the offensive line front, Ian Moore lost his black stripe today. He's looking fantastic. Ian Moore, last year's class out of Indiana, top 200 guy, 6'6", 310, looks awesome. And the speech he gave after his black stripe, what an attitude. Listen to this kid.
We got a black stripe alive! Hey man, this guy was a gold guy this summer. He's tough as nails and doesn't take a rep ball. Newest member of whole block, Ian Moore! Hey!
First off, I just want to thank God, man. I couldn't be here without him. Shout out the O-line, get me right every day. Shout out the D-line, working me, get me better. Shout out Coach Fry, Coach Mike, Coach Graham, giving me tips and everything. Where's the Army? There's one of them. Great running. Go Bucks! Yay!
So in last year's class, the class of 2024, you've got Ian Moore, you've got the Armstrong twins, you've got Gabe Van Sickle on a little bit of a longer plan. Ian Moore and the Armstrong twins, they're coming along a little faster. Big guys looking pretty good. That's a solid class. That's a solid Ohio State line class. You can get behind it. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing fantastic about it. These guys may end up turning out to be fantastic, but nothing wrong with it at all. It's not great. It's not bad. It's solid. So it's not been all bad. The issue I've had has been the offers. You've got to offer more people. You can't repeat the same mistake twice, and it's currently happening, but I think that the word is getting out, and it's going to get to places that it needs to go, because we're now hearing the most powerful people in Ohio State media bring this issue up. And when it gets to that level, then it goes to the top. It just does. Starts getting asked in places that makes it uncomfortable. So that's where we're at. Now, listen. So why did my guy call me a homer, Shiesty? I think he called me a homer because I said, take a look at this list here. Top 10 coaches for PFF in college football. Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, number 3. Guys, Dan Lanning, heck of an up-and-comer. Are you kidding me? He's coached 2 years. Now, I've defended this guy when people harp on him not being able to win the big game, as he's only coached 2 years, and I think that's ridiculous to say he's not able to win the big game. This is PFF, supposedly a very respected name, putting that guy number 3, right ahead of a guy with 2 national championships who's been to 4 national championship games, ahead of Kyle Whittingham. Then you got Mike Norvell at 5 or at 6, Sark at 7, Brian Kelly at 8. Behind those guys, Lane Kiffin right ahead of number 10, who you can't see because I got something running on the screen there at the bottom. It's Ryan Day. Ryan Day is number 10, the number 10 coach. Now, what I was saying the other day that I think he's calling me a homer for is the separation between Ryan Day and Kirby Smart's resume. Both not good against their rival. Both didn't win a national championship through 5 years of coaching. Both have an excellent winning percentage. Ryan Day's is better. Now, Kirby plays in the SEC, which means he plays a couple more ranked opponents usually on his schedule every year. So if you want to balance that out and say Kirby's slightly lower winning percentage is even to Ryan Day's, okay, fine, fair enough. Those resumes are almost identical. Recruiting, almost identical. Every aspect of their resumes are almost identical, except Kirby has 2 national championships, which is massive. Ryan Day has none. But what happened that separated him having 2 and him having none? 1 field goal. If that field goal goes the other way, they both have 1. And it's odd. What are these balloons doing? It's odd that hinged on 1 game, on 1 kick, that those guys were going head to head. Not usually something you see. But seriously, that last drive of that game, or that hit on Marvin, or whatever you want to say, that game right there, that's what hinged on Kirby having 2 and him having 0 to them both being tied. And if they were tied, their resumes are identical, and the argument is big and loud over who is the number 1 coach in the country, Ryan Day or Kirby Smart. And heading into this season, it's the show me year. Things could be so much different. They're not. That didn't happen. But that's the difference in their resume. If that makes me a homer, all right. I am a homer. But like I said, I'm not a blind homer. As you can see, let's get Adam Guthrie his offer, for crying out loud. Just unbelievable. Oh, my word. Anyway, what else we got, guys? What else we got? Oh, this is the number 1 lineman in the country in the class of 2026, Emmanuel Ahianachu. Really awesome name. And he is apparently really, really high on 2 schools. And you see him right there, Ohio State and Oregon. And I got to start remembering that there are some more people now listening in the podcast format, so I will not rely on the pictures so much. Obviously, things are cooking up with him, and that's great. Now, also, I want to talk to you guys about the David Sanders clothing line. So the David Sanders clothing line has come up, and there is apparently, look, the Ohio State sweatshirt still on the David Sanders clothing line. Some people were making the argument that all this is he has Ohio State merchandise that he already had made, and he needs to get it off. So he needs to get rid of the inventory, because once he chooses Tennessee, he's never going to sell that Ohio State sweatshirt stuff, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, it does. Unfortunately for the folks making this argument, Juck on Bucks happens to be sponsored by a little place called Columbus Apparel Company. I had Columbus Apparel Company take a look at those sweatshirts, and guess what he told me? Those sweatshirts and that print job is called print on demand. And essentially what that means is the company is sitting there with a bunch of blank sweatshirts. The order comes in and they print it on demand instead of a normal screen printed shirt, which means you would have to have inventory of all those different teams and all those different prints. That's not what's going on here. So there is no pre-made inventory of any of those clothing items. It's all print on demand. Now, that means that argument's blown to bits. There is no backstock of Ohio State sweatshirts that he needs to get rid of. There's no inventory on the shelves. That is still on there, by the way, with no other colleges, just the Ohio State sweatshirt. Unfortunately, he did also tell me something else. There are some cases, and David Sanders may be one, where these folks have just grabbed photos of him online, had him sign his stamp of approval, and made the design and everything, and he really hasn't paid much attention to any of it. The whole thing takes 5 emails, and all they're saying is sign this, and we will send you a cut of the money. No upfront investment, no nothing. So it very well may just be something that whatever company he's working with did on their own. And if that's the case, well, that kind of blows my argument up. Either way, we'll see at 12:45 on Saturday. Hope you're here with me. It's going to be a banger. What else? All right, guys, that'll do me for today. Appreciate y'all so much. Please check me out in podcast format. Like and share the video or something. Just get something. Do join me tomorrow at 12:30. Chris Drew, Dan Divjak, JR, Mello, Devin. We're all going to be here. I'm going to roll them in. We're going to have one hell of a time. It's going to be a fun show. Hopefully, David Sanders can surprise us all. If not, it is what it is. We're still going to have a good time. You know why? Things are great, man. Things are fantastic. Any of the issues, they're kicked down the road. The can is kicked down the road. We don't need to worry about them right now. Football is about to start, and we can officially just focus on that. So, talk to you later, guys. Jug on Bucks out.